Hey folks, it's been a long time since I recorded anything, and on the one hand, a lot has happened, and on the other hand, it's not so much that a lot has happened, but it's more like my emotions about what been going on. But I think last time I was uploading uploaded a video, it was either I think I was back in the Midwest, but my grandma passed away, and almost immediately, this conflict broke out between ourselves and these estranged cousins, extremely estranged cousins, who are the children of my deceased adopted uncle. And him and his wife got divorced, like, I don't know how many years ago it was that they got divorced, but he passed away in 2011, so he hasn't, essentially, literally he's been deceased all this time, so, essentially not in the picture all this time, and they didn't really have a relationship with him as far as I could tell, but, they got raised by their mother who, hated him for whatever psychotic reason she could come up with, but, so essentially some legal wrangling broke out, and it included a lot of threats from their side, harassment, management of intimidation, emotional extortion. Some of those terms, I didn't come up with. I only learned about them basically because my sister, who I have issues with and still do, but she watched a lot of crime, drama shows, and she picked up on a lot of terminology, so she was able to bring that, into the conversation. But it wasn't even like, I think it was like a little bit over a month after my grandma passed away, and there was a conference call between us, and that's when the threats really started. And first we thought the attorney was, well, I mean, I had the impression that she was obviously favoring their side and was, going to be representing them because the elder of their two cousins basically strong-armed us into making him the PR, saying that, we essentially couldn't be because we were out of state. And I seem to be getting something of a cold, but where was I? So, we did try to still work with the attorney, but essentially she was sort of like feeding everything to their side, almost like telling them, hey, keep up the pressure, this is what they're, focusing on, you can use that against them, that sort of a deal. Eventually I got fed up with the behavior, particularly because it was also, it was affecting me, but it was also affecting my sister. I was really concerned about that, so I was just like, screw this, telling to my dad, start calling around, getting a lawyer. And of course, I had to wrangle with him about money issues because, he was like, assuming that we couldn't pay for an attorney and so on, and I just had to force him to, do his part, essentially, telling him that, we'll worry about the cost of all of this once we actually find someone who's willing and able to take our case. And then we went through at least, it was two attorneys, and then we finally got to a third who was willing to and able to take our case. And she has about 30 years experience doing this sort of stuff. And we had to basically split the bill down the middle for the retainer fee and, pay for a consultation, all that, we had to do the consultation and then pay for the retainer fee. And at first we essentially, I wanted us to obviously send a letter saying that we have legal representation and, with some, potential consequences for them because of their behavior. Moving into formal probate, having that cousin removed as PR, etc. listing off the, basically our concerns, or, like the things that they've done that, are causing us to get legal representation, or caused us to do so. And, obviously, like, it was kind of like, it was interesting, how quickly the attorney responded to that, because prior to that, both my sister and my dad had been trying to contact her, and, we were trying to get a second appraisal on the house, because they were essentially threatening to, sell the house, even though we had, not for one thing indicated that we wanted to keep the house, because it's, my grandparents' house, and it's actually, I guess, 120 years old, but my grandparents got it in the 50s. Their first and only house, because they grew up poor, and the Great Depression, World War II, and all that. So like a classic American story. But the attorney responded really quickly, and basically, tried to deny everything, and fire back about this and that. That they didn't get an appraiser, they got a real estate agent, and denying everything, even though we have enough circumstantial evidence and probable cause and so on to believe that the younger of the two cousins was going to the house and stealing things. She's, by the way, an out-and-out druggie, I think heroin or meth, and she had her boyfriend / drug dealer at our initial meeting way back in December, right after our grandma's funeral, where I was a pallbearer. And she brought her boyfriend into the house, basically like showing him around to all these things. Oh, this is worth money, if you just, stick around, I'll sell all this stuff, and, you'll get your money and I get my drugs. And obviously, if you don't have money to buy drugs, they'll buy it with sex. I mean, that's an obvious sort of like, thing. I was just, when it came to that aspect, I was kind of confused as to like why they were letting him in, and even the other cousin's wife into the house, into the meeting, that sort of deal. But I'm gonna have to blow my nose. Apologies. But anyways, where was I? So, you got the lawyer, you got the letter out. They responded denying all sorts of stuff. I was really, well, I've been super stressed about this, partially because, you see, I understood, and my family had to try and fight me and all this. So you don't know what the hell you're talking about, even though I read the probate guide, even though I did my damn research. They can't do anything without our consent. And it's like, I literally sat down, spent all this time reading through all this documentation so I would know what the heck I was talking about. And I had to get, basically called an idiot multiple times by my father, and treated like I was some like little childish, whatever idiot by my sister. But essentially, with the way the law is written, particularly in that state, the PR can do a whole lot of things. It's like dictatorial powers. Like they could go and sell the entirety of the estate in a single moment, so to speak, if they wanted to. And I was concerned about pushing things too far to the extent that he would do that. Particularly as retaliation, and so finally, because I was trying to get my sister involved, because she's one of the other heirs, and obviously, like, maybe this is a bit of red pill stuff, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know if that term's pertinent to this, but I've gotten the sense, particularly, see, like, our attorney is female, and I'm not saying anything against that, However, I've gotten the sense, both with her and the other attorney who was also female, that at least as far as I'm concerned, possibly my dad as well, it's just way more effective to have my sister on the line in communication with her, because it's sort of like that sisterhood, vibe of like, okay, I'm gonna look out for my sister, whereas with me it's kind of like, oh, we got this man, he can't handle it, he had to come to me, kind of a deal. And anytime my sister's been on the line and talked to the attorney, like, stuff has moved, because partially because of that, largely because of that. Like, I can correlate all this information, I can get screenshots, I can get all this evidence put together, which I did, put it on a Google Drive. But like, to actually get the attorney to do this, that, and the other, for the most part, it's like having my sister involved. And the interesting thing about getting her involved, having my father involved, all this stuff, it really has sort of brought to the fore, like, both the strengths and the weaknesses of this family, and a lot of issues that have up to this point been sort of like buried. There was like a moment of like, there's been moments of like, you could say, emotional closeness, where we've like, we're on the same page, we're on the same team. We went to the movies, like, I think it was the last weekend. Wait, today is the 10th, so yeah, it was last weekend. And I saw this long anticipated movie, Dune Part 2. And there was that sort of, energy there, so to speak. But at the same time, it's also, brought up a lot of issues where like I feel like my sister's also using this as an excuse for a lot of stuff, because as much as there's been like a certain level of respect for the fact that I went and made sure we got an attorney and I did all these things, there's also been this sort of like vibe of like, oh, I had to step in, I had to do all this, I actually had the close relationship with grandma, this is about me, and my this and that. And obviously we want to keep the house, quote unquote, in the family, but it's also sort of, it's brought a lot of other things to bear, and I'm kind of dancing around it a bit because I'm trying to figure out the words for it, but I think I need to give a broader context as a thing, because my sister's got this fiance. He's an alright guy. I mean, as far as his personality and so on is concerned. They're wanting to get married in June, actually, on the same day that my parents got married. That's all fine and well, but there's a lot of stuff that ties in with the relationship with my father, and sorry, and with my mother when it comes to this, because for one thing, there's all this talk that, oh, if my dad dies, what will happen? And knowing how my sister has been over the years, it's been this case of like until she met this guy, everything was gonna fall on my shoulders, and I'd be expected to like be working to support her, keeping a roof over her head. Like, back in 2021 when my dad had that stroke and he nearly died, I mean, her first thing was to ask me that if I even if I could pay the mortgage on the house, which apparently my boomer dad still has. He has this. Their finances are screwed, but you know, it's classic, like very classic baby boomer. I didn't pay off my house. Kind of, you know, bull crap. Even though he makes six figures all these years and this, that, and the other, but can't pay off his mortgage, and the alcoholism of my mother, and the financial mismanagement, and the medical bills, and all these other things that came with that. But you know, it's the fact that now this fiance is in the picture. You know, I almost like feel like I need to make this a two-part video. I mean, I know I'm only at 16 minutes, and you know, I can sometimes run into like an hour long when I do these rambles. I don't really necessarily always like take notes beforehand, but it's like, yeah, you know, he could possibly support her. But it's not even that. A lot of it like sort of reflects back onto me, like all the lies my father told me about what it took to get married, and the fact that we have this house in Wisconsin, and the fact that I'm sure in the future it's gonna be some sort of battle between my sister and I over that. Like, this is only like round one, you know, like round one is get these, you know, cousins out of the way, particularly the druggy cousin, and that, you know, round two will be my sister and her, at that point it'll be husband wanting to move into that house and, you know, take control of that, and we're gonna do this, that, and the other with it, and we're gonna, you know, and presenting themselves as, you know, the truest of the true heirs, and forcing me out of the way. And then probably even going to the extent of, oh, they have their first son, you know, naming him after my grandpa, which is what I want to do with my first kid, you know, if I had a son. And it's just becoming more and more evident to me, like, not only the favoritism from my father, if that wasn't already evident, given that in the light of all of this, you know, he's talked about all these other things where it's just like, you know, this should go to your sister, this should go to your sister, this should go to your sister, you know, her needs matter more, and in this case, you know, in this case, you know, like, and you know, like recently, like after we went and saw that movie, we went on this day trip, my dad and I, and in the midst of that, he drops on me this, you know, bombshell that rapist cousin is in Australia now, and you know, the only reason he's able to do that is because he has money from the rent from our properties, which he's been stealing all this time. And almost in the same breath, like my dad, you know, well, it wasn't actually, no, it wasn't the same breath. It was, I think it was a day or two later. You know, these things are all kind of tied together by their relation to each other, not necessarily their timeline. But a day or two later, you know, my dad's telling me that I'm probably going to have to drop out of school so I can get a job to pay for a loan so that we can, you know, buy out the house and that sort of thing. And it's like, it's very beta bucksy, if you will, because he'll have me, or he'll try and force me to go do that kind of thing, but in the end, well, it's also your sister's, and you know, she should actually get to live there with her husband, and you know, all these things. All you did was just pay for this, you know, sort of a deal. And that's what essentially is going to end up coming out of their mouths in the future. I'm pretty freaking sure. But you know, on that day trip, to kind of jump back a bit, he starts talking about like how he's gonna get one of my other cousins from his side of the family who has sort of this micro loan, you know, micro banking, you know, business. I think that's how I would describe it as far as what I understand of it. I don't, you know, have the complete picture, but get him to try and give my sister's now fiance and, you know, future husband, a loan so he could go start his, you know, his own pet shop business, because he works at a pet shop right now and he's entrepreneurial and, you know, all this stuff. And then he would like go and drag my youngest cousin, who is still, and I don't know if he'll ever recover, but he's still like going through this whole process of trying to heal from the trauma that he was subjected to, the horrors he was subjected to by that other, by there's like basically there's 3 cousins, or well, there's 6 cousins total, but the cousin who was the rapist cousin subjected him to all these horrors, and the banking cousin is the youngest cousin who is the victim. That's his older brother. So these are like 3 separate people. 3 separate people. But you know, just blabbing on about that, and you know, it's like, I don't know if I did tell any of you folks, but like, and it may have been in retrospect a quote unquote cockamamie idea, you know, and it was gonna fail anyway, but I had an attempt at a business about a decade ago. And the way my father responded to that was just he was abusive, okay? He was outrightly abusive and humiliating. He did everything he could to sabotage that, to make it fail. But when it comes to my sister and her current fiance, possible future husband, you know, he's like 180 degrees the opposite. And you know, there's the fact that I spent the last decade and a half, you know, getting an engineering degree and doing all these things, you know, working, paying my debts, paying my bills, because for one thing, I was always told, you gotta get your ish together if you're gonna do, you know, the whole relationship marriage thing. That was drilled into my head. And I'm looking at this now going like, let me get this straight, Dad. He does that. He's a great guy. Meaning he does, or excuse me, he does, sorry, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. That's a bit of confusion right there I'm creating. Let me step back and I'll sort of rewind, because obviously, I mean, I don't have really video editing capabilities right now, but I'm gonna step back. So I spent a decade and a half basically like believing all of my father's lies about how you get your act together. You got to do that if you want to be husband material. You know, it's the classic, you know, including the whole like be her friend, you know, first, yeah, all that kind of, I'm sure anybody who's, you know, gone through this has probably heard all these things. You know, you got to go to college, you got to get that degree, you got to make sure it's this kind of a degree, not that kind of a degree. You know, maybe that's the missing link for a lot of folks. They were just told, just go to college. They weren't told to specialize in this or that. But I did all those things. Now I'm, you know, in my late 30s and single, unmarried, childless, massive amounts of debt. Not as much as I was, you know, 4 to 5 years ago. I mean, you know, a fraction of that, but still. You know, if I get my credit cards paid off, which I could do, you know, once I get a job pretty quickly, I'd be maybe a third of what I was, but that's neither here nor there. I did all of that, and here I am, single, childless, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking at this situation going, oh, hold on, let me get this straight, Dad. This guy, he didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that. He did not do any of that. I think he has like an associate's in something related to computer science, but he's not even like working in that field, not even trying. He's working at a pet shop. He lives at home with his parents, you know, whom he, to cut him some slack, he has to pay them rent outright, which is kind of, I mean, some parents do that, some parents don't. I suppose it's humiliating and emasculating for him, but, you know, they never gave a damn when they emasculated me. My own parents never gave a damn. But when they hear about him, they're like, oh, that's just so horrible. And then, you know, my dad will turn to me and say, like, well, if you ever say that I did anything like that, because I never did anything like that. I'm getting, like, super... He hates being called out on his own, you know, BS. But anyways, it's like, he never did any of what I did. Never got the engineering degree or anything of that nature. Hasn't supported himself, even, really. Works at a freaking pet shop. And you know what? A lot of this could, you know, sort of boil into, or not boil down to, or it's almost like it's almost like this, you know, you hear these cases, these guys who, like, they're like, you know, I'm a good husband, but my wife won't, you know, sleep with me. I did all these things, you know, we have the big house and the nice cars, and we go on these, you know, awesome vacations, and this, that, and the other, but she won't sleep with me. But then I found out about how when she was back in college, oh, she was so crazy, and she was doing threesomes, and, you know, it's almost like, or even just like seeing, you know, even more classic than that is the, why does that girl date that, you know, that bad boy jerk? You know, I'd be so much better for, you know, it's almost like that in the sense that, like, you know, but you, instead of it being just that you're just a nice guy, it's that you spent a decade, you know, building yourself up in all the ways that you were told a man should build himself up and to be the pinnacle of that. And then to find out that all you had to do was live at home for all those years. You know, even though my parents were always giving me such grief, get the hell out of our house, you effing freeloader, you loser. So all I had to do was just stay at home for all those years, work in retail. I could have done that. I mean, yeah, I think it seems like everybody, at least, you know, at least in America, at some point has some sort of like working at a grocery store type, you know, job at some point in time. Pretty much everybody. So I could have done that. Then when I got to, you know, my mid-30s, what? Met some girl, or maybe along the way just, you know, impregnated some woman. That would have been good enough. Like, you know, and all the resentment I've dealt with from my father because, like, you know, I didn't become this, I didn't become that, I, you know, and it's like getting to this point where now it's like, oh, you know, all your sister has to do is just find some guy, get married, and let him, you know, impregnate her. Which they haven't gotten to that point, but it's going in that direction, and that'll be enough, you know. And she gets all the praise, you know. It's like when it's her birthday, he goes all out. When it was my birthday last year, which was two months and 10 days after my mother passed away, he basically told me since my mother was no longer alive, he wasn't doing anything for my birthday. Like, I didn't get anything in the mail. I didn't even a simple freaking happy birthday card. Like, that's what I was to him, because I wasn't down there working away on his plantation doing stuff for him. And even if I did, like, even if I did stuff for my sister, she would come back and say that I never did anything for her compared to this guy, you know. When it's like, you know, she wouldn't even be alive to meet him if it wasn't for me. But now I gotta deal with that side of things where my sister is trying to claim that she had the actual closer relationship with her grandma compared to me, and that she's setting things up to not only have her wedding in June and have all the attention and praise and, you know, validation given to her, that if I were to ever even get an ounce of that, I would have had to earn that, you know, with blood, sweat, and tears. And after, frankly speaking, my father made sure that my only advocate, my mother, died an untimely death, we keep on giving her alcohol, which led to chronic pancreatitis, which led to pancreatic cancer, which he doesn't want to take any freaking responsibility for because he's a damn coward. And then after all of that, It's going to be a fight over the house in Portage between myself and my sister. And my sister... And I'm realizing this, like what I'm about to say, but it's kind of like she's been prepared for this her whole life, and I've been completely unprepared. It was like, it's almost like, they had that whole old Aesop's fable of, I think it was the ant and the cricket, and how the ant basically spent all this time building up its stores for the winter, and the cricket was out, enjoying life and partying and all that. When the winter came around, the cricket wanted, to get into the house, even though he'd, been mocking the ant. Because he wanted, the food that the ant had been storing up so he could survive. And he wouldn't die of cold and all that. But instead, it's kind of like, what if the cricket was able to find a way to break into the house and steal the food, and he could, have somebody else go and, off the ant, so the ant wouldn't, there would be no witnesses, that sort of thing. It seems like it's been that kind of case with me, where it's like I've been taught how to go and be a good, worker bee, so to speak. Buzz, go make them money. And then she's been taught how to sort of wait in the wings and wrangle that out of my hands, or wrangle property out of my hands. Like, I can go create all these things, or research all these things, build all this stuff up, and then she can just go steal it from me. And it even boils down to, like, the genealogy and the family history, where, like, she will now claim that she cares so much about that and wants to know all about that and make that hers. And all this time, the only person who gave a damn was me. And no one wants to recognize that fact. And, my dad, he's a real piece of work. He really is. The fact that it's just like, it's like she's a celebrity and he's the fan. And it goes beyond, the stereotypical, daddy's little princess stuff. Because it would, so many times over the last, 20 or 30 years, it was like any opportunity he got to humiliate me, he took. And if she wanted to humiliate me, he would chime in. Like, even on my freaking birthday, they would do that kind of stuff. Like, it goes beyond that. And I don't understand it. Or maybe I don't want to understand it. But these things have kind of been brought to the fore because of, it's sort of like, okay, we're being forced to work with each other. We're being forced to recognize each other's, needs and wants and feelings and all this kind of stuff. And at the same time, like, they're really not. I mean, the reason I got an attorney was because of what the younger of the two cousins, what she did and how it affected my sister. I was like, screw this. If that's making my sister practically have a heart attack, well, I'm not screwing around with this. We're not playing, we're not playing weak at this point. We're getting a damn attorney. And my dad was more concerned with money than he was concerned with, sorting stuff out, because he didn't really give a damn. And when his sentiments will change about a thing, and it's like 3 months after the fact, and I was already telling him about all this stuff. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm probably gonna have to lawyer up in the future myself, and stop them from doing this, that, and the other. There's some things that I probably won't be able to, and it's really gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt if she goes and has a son and then names him after my grandpa, when she never knew my grandpa. She never met him. He passed away. That's probably the prime. That's not just probably. That is the primary reason why she doesn't. But she never gave a damn to even learn about him, and to try and get him his military awards, and even posthumously, and this, that, and the other. That kind of thing would really hurt. It will really hurt if she goes and does that. things I might not be able to control for. But other things I'm having to look, 6 months to a year in the future and go, okay, like I got to make sure I have the money for a good lawyer, because I'm going to be having a fight with her, because it's like she, and what else gets to me is the fact that, like, given that I was told that you had to get your ish together in order to be a married couple and all that, it's like she's so damned entitled. And I'm not saying that she hasn't ever done good by me or that she hasn't helped in this, but it's a mixed bag. It's like, it's not, it's the same thing with how my mother was. It was like, was she the devil incarnate? No. But was she an angel? No, she wasn't an angel either, and it's basically, it's so much like that. I mean, my sister goes and drinks herself into a hospital bed, gets chronic acute necrotic pancreatitis, has to have surgery to have a large part of that taken out, including also taking out her spleen, similar to what my mom did, except that at this point it hasn't turned cancerous, thankfully. And the entitled mentality of, like, I don't have to work, I don't have to get a job, I don't have to get qualifications, I don't have to. Daddy's got to make it happen for me. Or if daddy doesn't make it, and I can't, bitch him out to get him to give me that sort of stuff, I'll go bitch out my fiance, future husband, and if that doesn't work, then I'll go bitch out my brother, and you're going to make this happen. This is going to be number one priority for you to take care of this, business in Wisconsin, and, then you're going to provide this for me and provide that for me, and I have to get married. It's like, what? I was going to be getting married at 32, 33 years old to my then girlfriend. And my goddamn family, pardon my French, Lord, if you're out there, please forgive me for taking your name in vain. My family had to do everything they could to screw that up for me and destroy that. Like, I look at them and I'm just kind of like, what do you guys really want? On the one hand, they're super pissed that they were super pissed that they didn't have grandkids. And my mom on her deathbed telling me, I just want you to have 2 kids, that's all, sort of thing. And it's like, Mom, I would have had kids by now if you guys hadn't done all that things that you did. And even then, I still miss my mom, because when it came to my scumbag father and my scumbag sister, she at least advocated for me. And, I tried to have a relationship with her, and I know I'm rambling here. I tried to have a relationship with her. My father and sister would always get in the way. They would do whatever they could to shame me for being at all close to my mother. Oh, you're a mama's boy because your mom made you a sandwich. Oh, yeah, whatever, mama's boy, you're coddled. All this crap. And I'm going to have to be prepared for a future fight with her because, like I said, entitled, thinks she deserves all this stuff. That, like, what? Okay, so what are you going to do for her now, Daddy? Are you going to buy her a house? You going to co-sign on a mortgage for her? You going to co-sign on a lease so she can have an apartment? Are you going to buy her a car? Like, when in her life is she ever going to have to earn a damn thing and learn what it's really like? And I haven't been prepared in my whole life for how to deal with conflict, interpersonal conflict. It's always been just like being dominated, beat down, manipulated. They figure out which buttons to press, all these things that it's just, this stuff is coming to the fore because of my grandmother's death and the fact that we've had to, we're going to present a unified front and work with each other. But I don't know what's coming down the pipeline. I got some quizzes to take. I got other things to do, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't have to drop out because I'm like within a semester of getting into graduate school, which I can't explain how much that would change my life. Because, you know, this is not just it's not just any masters. We're talking about masters in biomedical engineering at a program where they are so well connected with all these biomedical device companies in this area. And as long as I didn't screw that up, I would, for all intents and purposes, be guaranteed a decent actual engineering job after graduation. And obviously I would have to be applying for internships and that sort of thing. I mean, I had to do my part, but the thing is, like, the BME program at this school does way more to advocate for its students than the chemical engineering program ever did. And that's something that's what I mean when I say almost guaranteed. Almost, meaning the almost part is I got to do my part, but they'd basically be advocating for their students, and I'd be one of them, and it would just be this massive changeover in my life. And, you know, my family wants to take that away from me, and this is a sentiment I get. And, you know, furthermore, they want to give everything of it, all emotional value, over to my sister, meaning my dad wants to. So I'm gonna have to do some real research in the, you know, just to be aware. It's all these things that I thought I wasn't gonna have to deal with, didn't want to have to deal with, that now I'm gonna have to deal with. So anyways, I've gone on way too long. I need to get back to grab some food and then complete those quizzes. But anyways, I'll see you folks around. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the support. Bye bye.